She was 8.5 months pregnant when her husband looked her in the eyes at a party she paid for, in a building she built, and raised his glass toward another woman. She said nothing. She drove home alone. She went into labor at midnight, and by the time her twins took their first breath, she was in a coma. That was when her husband signed the papers declaring her dead. That was when his mistress moved into her house, slept in her bed, and gave her children new names. For 8 months, the world believed Evelyn Hartford was gone. But here is what they did not know. She could hear everything, every word, every footstep, every lie spoken in the hallway outside her room. And she was not fading. She was planning. Because the woman they declared dead had quietly, silently, without a single announcement, built a $65 billion empire. And she was about to walk back through the front door of the building that had her name on it, and make every single person in that room remember exactly who built it. This is the story of what happens when the quietest person in the room turns out to own it. If you have ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed to the side table in a room you built, stay with us. This one is for you. If this story sounds like something you needed to hear today, hit the like button before you go. Leave one word in the comments that describes Evelyn, and subscribe so you never miss the next story. Every share puts this in front of someone who might need it right now.
Doctors say coma patients can sometimes hear everything around them. They hear the voices, they hear the machines, they hear the footsteps in the hall. I heard my husband tell the nurse I was gone. I heard the scratch of his pen on the paper when he signed. I heard her heels on my floor, that particular rhythm, confident, unhurried, like a woman who has already decided something. I heard my babies crying somewhere down the hall on the first night of their lives, and I could not go to them. But here is what I need you to understand before this story goes any further. I was not fading. I was gathering. I was patient the way only a woman who has spent 11 years building $65 billion in complete silence knows how to be patient. My name is Evelyn Grace Hartford. And the building they were standing in when they decided I was gone, I built that building. I own that building. My name is on every document that building has ever filed. They just forgot that silence is not the same as absence. They forgot that a woman who has never needed to raise her voice to move mountains does not need to be awake to keep them standing. I want to tell you this story, not because I need you to feel sorry for me. I do not need that. I want to tell you this story because somewhere out there is a woman sitting at a table near the kitchen doors being told she does not belong in the room she built. And I want her to know something. The floor remembers who built it. It always does. The name carved above the entrance of Hartford Medical Center read exactly that, Hartford. It was a name that had belonged to Evelyn Grace Cole before she married Carter Hartford. So was at 29 years old in a garden ceremony in Connecticut with white peonies and her grandmother's silver bracelet on her wrist. She had kept the name after marriage partly for simplicity and partly because she had already begun filing the first incorporation documents under it, and changing them would have required a level of paperwork that even she did not want to deal with in the first trimester of what was already a complicated year. The building itself rose 12 stories above the Chicago Medical District, and on a clear night, it lit up the block like something permanent, like something that had always been there and always would be. Evelyn arrived at 6 in the morning on the day this story truly begins. She was 8.5 months pregnant with twins, and she had not slept more than 4 hours, and she had a board meeting at 9 that she had called herself about the group's next major acquisition. She took the elevator to the 7th floor, walked past her assistant's empty desk, let herself into her office, and sat down in front of 2 monitors with a coffee that she would forget to drink until it went completely cold. Her office was not what people expected when they heard $65 billion. No marble, no statement furniture, one large desk with too many files on it, a window overlooking the east wing that she had designed herself, a framed photograph of a farmhouse in Vermont, where she had spent the summer she was 11 years old and first understood that she wanted to build things that lasted. Maggie Calloway arrived at 7:15 with a stack of acquisition files under one arm and a look on her face that said she had already been working for 2 hours. Maggie was Evelyn's CFO and had been since year 3 of the company. She was 51 years old, Irish-American, with short silver hair she had stopped coloring 4 years ago, and a sense of humor that operated like a scalpel. She set the files on the corner of the desk and looked at Evelyn's coffee cup. "That coffee has been cold for 40 minutes, Maggie said. "I know," Evelyn said. "You are also sitting on a $1.2 billion pharmaceutical acquisition and eating a gas station granola bar. It has oats," Evelyn said. "Evelyn, you own 17 hospitals. It also has dark chocolate chips. I checked." Maggie sat down in the chair across the desk and opened the top file. "The Meridian acquisition closes Friday if you sign today. The board in Seattle wants a call before noon. And your husband's PR firm billed us again for the anniversary campaign on the East Wing renovation. Third time this quarter." Evelyn did not look up from her monitor. "Pay it," she said. "He charges 40% above market rate," Maggie said. "I know," Evelyn said. "You have been subsidizing his business for 6 years. I know that too." Maggie looked at her for a moment. "Does he know?" Evelyn finally looked up. She picked up her cold coffee. She took a sip anyway. "Carter believes he built a successful regional PR firm through talent and persistence," she said. "He is proud of that. I decided a long time ago that telling him the truth about where his client referrals originate would be a conversation that helped no one and ended badly." Maggie was quiet for a moment. "And the 65 billion, Maggie said. "Does he know about that?" "Carter thinks I manage the administrative side of a moderately successful medical consulting operation," Evelyn said. "He has never asked to see the books. I have never offered to show them." She set the coffee down. "Some people are not ready for the truth about the people they married," she said. "I kept waiting for Carter to become ready. He kept giving me reasons to keep waiting." Maggie nodded slowly. She had known Evelyn for 11 years. She understood the architecture of this silence better than anyone. She had watched Evelyn build Hartford Medical Group from a single failing clinic she acquired in her 3rd year of marriage into a $65 billion privately held healthcare institution. She had watched her do it quietly, systematically, in the way that very few people build very large things, without announcement, without audience, without ever once needing the room to turn and look at her. She had also watched Carter stand at podiums and accept compliments for being married to a woman with vision. "Tonight is the gala," Maggie said. "Are you still going?" "I built the room," Evelyn said. "I will be there. You have a board meeting that runs until 8, then I will arrive at 8:40, Evelyn said. "I am 8.5 months pregnant. I am not arriving early to anything." She turned back to her monitor. "Get me Seattle at 11:50, she said, "and order something for lunch that is not from a gas station." "It has oats," Maggie said, already walking out. "It has dark chocolate chips," Evelyn called after her. This was how Evelyn Hartford worked. This was how she had always worked, quietly, precisely, with a kind of focused intelligence that did not need an audience, because the work itself was the point. She had understood from a very young age that the people who announce themselves loudly are usually working on the announcement. The people who are actually building something rarely have time for the announcement. She signed the Meridian acquisition papers At 10:47, she took the Seattle call at 11:52. She had 3 more meetings in the afternoon, and she ate a sandwich at her desk, and she did not leave the office until 7:30 that evening when her driver was already downstairs waiting. The gala had started at 7. She was 40 minutes late to her own event. She did not rush. The atrium of Hartford Medical Center on gala night was the kind of room that believed in itself completely. Chandeliers hung low and golden. The band played smooth and easy in the far corner. The room smelled like fresh flowers and expensive cologne and the particular energy of people who have too much money and not quite enough honesty. Every donor in Chicago seemed to be there. Every press outlet had sent someone. The city had come out to celebrate the hospital's expansion fund, and the whole room was moving with the easy confidence of people who believed they were at the center of something important. At the podium, with a microphone in his hand and a grin on his face, like he had built the world himself, stood Carter Hartford. He was a good-looking man. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who took up space naturally without seeming to try. He wore his tuxedo like it had been made for him personally. The crowd watched him the way crowds always watch charming men, like he was exactly where he belonged. Standing just to his left, close enough that the cameras caught her in every frame, was Brooke Summers. She wore red, a deep, deliberate red that caught the light every time she shifted her weight. She smiled the way women smile when they know they are being watched and have decided to enjoy it. Her hand rested lightly on Carter's arm. She looked like she belonged there. She looked like she had always belonged there. That was the point. That was always the point. What nobody in that glittering room seemed to notice, or care to notice, was that the woman whose name was on every founding document of that hospital was not at the podium. She was not in the front row. She was not wearing red or holding anyone's arm. Evelyn Cole Hartford arrived 40 minutes into her own gala wearing a simple navy dress over a body that was 8.5 months heavy with twins. She had come directly from a board meeting that had run long, a board meeting she had called herself about the hospital's next acquisition, the kind of meeting that nobody in that room would have believed she had the authority to call. She walked through the grand atrium she had designed and looked for her husband in the crowd. She found him at the podium. She saw Brooke beside him. She stopped walking for just a moment, one breath, no more. Then she kept moving forward. She was almost to the front of the room when Diana Hartford stepped in front of her. Diana was Carter's mother. She wore a champagne dress and a smile that had no warmth in it whatsoever. She was 63 years old and had spent all 63 years perfecting the art of cruelty with perfect manners. She placed one hand on Evelyn's arm and leaned in close. The smile never left her face. "Tonight is not your night, sweetheart," Diana whispered, soft enough that only Evelyn could hear it. It never really was. Then she turned back toward the cameras like nothing had happened. Preston Hartford appeared from the left, Carter's older brother, built wide and certain, always in the orbit of whatever his family needed done. He didn't say a word. He simply placed himself beside Evelyn and steered her gently, but without real gentleness, toward a side table near the back of the room. The table sat close to the kitchen doors where the waitstaff moved in and out. An usher was already standing there, already briefed. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the usher said. "This section is reserved for VIP guests this evening." Evelyn looked at the usher. She looked at Preston. She did not argue. She stood still for a moment, with her hands folded in front of her, and her face completely quiet. Across the room, Carter caught sight of her. He saw her standing near the back wall, alone, tired, 8 months pregnant with his children. He raised his glass toward Brooke. He smiled for the camera that clicked just then. He did not call his wife forward. It was Judge Raymond Hollis who crossed the room to her. Raymond Hollis was the chairman of the Hartford Medical Group Board, A quiet, measured man in his late 60s who carried himself like someone who had seen everything and chosen to be moved only by what truly mattered. He walked directly to Evelyn, and when he reached her, he bowed his head. Not a small, social nod. A real bow, the kind you give to someone you respect completely. "The board knows what you built," he said quietly. "Tonight does not change that." Evelyn looked at him steadily. "It never does, Raymond," she said. What nobody in that glittering atrium understood, not Carter at the podium, not Diana with her champagne, not Brooke in her red dress, not a single one of them, was that every chandelier above their heads, every marble tile beneath their shoes, every dollar in that expansion fund being celebrated that night, traced back to one woman's name. And that woman was standing near the back wall by the kitchen doors, being told she did not belong. Evelyn drove herself home that night alone. The city lights moved past her windows, and she did not turn on the radio. She just drove in the quiet, with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on her belly, where her children moved, like they were already trying to make their way into the world. She passed the building twice without meaning to. She looked at it once from the car, a long, steady look. Her name invisible in every brick of it, present in every light that touched those high windows. Then she drove home. She was still awake at midnight when the first pain came. The contractions started at 12:14 in the morning. Evelyn lay still through the first three, counting, measuring the space between them, the way she measured everything, methodically, without panic, gathering information before drawing conclusions. By 12:40, she was on the phone to Maggie. "It is time," she said. "Now?" Maggie said. "Right now?" The twins appear to agree that midnight on a Thursday is the appropriate moment, yes. "Where's Carter?" Evelyn paused one beat. "He is not here," she said. Maggie was already moving. She could hear it through the phone. Keys, a door. "I will be there in 12 minutes, Maggie said. "Do not drive yourself. I am already in the car," Evelyn said. Evelyn Grace Hartford. "Do not drive yourself to the hospital. I own the hospital, Maggie. That does not make it a good idea." She drove herself anyway. She arrived at Hartford Medical Center at 12:58 in the morning and walked through the main entrance of the building she owned under her own power and signed herself in at the maternity ward desk. The nurse looked at her clipboard, looked at Evelyn, and looked at the clipboard again. "You're the founder?" the nurse said. "I am also currently in active labor," Evelyn said. "So perhaps we can do the tour another time." The labor was long. It was harder than the books had described, and harder than Evelyn had prepared for, and she had prepared for most things. Maggie arrived at 1:20 and stayed. She sat in the chair beside Evelyn's bed and held her hand through the parts that required hand-holding and talked about acquisition strategy through the parts that required distraction, and did not once say anything sentimental because Evelyn had never needed sentimentality, and Maggie knew this better than anyone. Carter arrived at 2:47. He came in with his jacket still on, and his tie slightly loosened, and the look of a man who had been at an after-party and left in a hurry. He stood at the foot of the bed and looked at Evelyn and said he was sorry he was late. Evelyn looked at him. She said nothing. Carter sat in the corner chair and checked his phone twice and then put it in his pocket and looked at the ceiling. The twins arrived at 4:16 in the morning. A boy and a girl. Small and perfect and furious with life. Crying the moment they hit the air, the way babies do when they are determined to let the world know they have arrived. The room was briefly full of that particular noise, urgent and indignant, and completely wonderful. But Evelyn did not hear them cry. By the time her daughter drew her first breath, Evelyn was already somewhere else. Her body had given everything it had, and then it had gone very still, and the machines beside her began talking in urgent tones, and the nurses moved fast, and the doctors said words to each other that they did not say out loud to the family in the room. The word the doctors used was coma. They explained it to Carter in a private consultation room with careful voices and careful faces. They said the brain was protecting itself. They said there was no way to know when she would wake up. They said sometimes patients recovered fully. They said sometimes they did not. They gave him brochures and offered him a counselor and told him to go home and rest. Carter sat in that consultation room for a long time after the doctors left. Then he went to her room. To his credit, he sat by her bed for 3 days. He looked at her face and held her hand. On the second night, he put his head down on the edge of her mattress and cried quietly for a while. Not performed grief, real grief, the kind that comes when a person realizes they have not been paying attention to something precious, and it is possible they have run out of time to correct that. But then Diana came. She arrived on the morning of the 4th day with coffee and a calm that felt rehearsed. She sat beside her son and took his hand and spoke to him the way she had always spoken to him when she wanted something from him. Soft, reasonable, inevitable. "You have 2 newborn babies," Diana said, "and a woman who may never come back to you. You have to think about your future now. You have to think about those children." Carter looked at his wife's still face. Preston came that evening and said the same thing in different words. He added the legal dimension. Things would get complicated if decisions were not made soon. There were assets to consider. There was Carter's position to consider. By day 5, Carter called Brooke. Meanwhile, in room 4B on the 4th floor of Hartford Medical Center, the machines kept their rhythm. The monitors blinked their green lines. Evelyn lay in the particular stillness of a body that had shut itself away to protect what mattered most. And every morning, at 5 o'clock, before her shift started, a nurse named Claire Donovan came and stood beside the bed. Claire had worked at Hartford Medical for 14 years. She knew exactly whose name was on the building. She had known from the very beginning. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down and spoke quietly the way you speak to someone you are absolutely certain can hear you even if they cannot answer. "Mrs. Hartford," she said every morning without fail. "We are still here." Maggie sat in the hallway waiting room for 36 hours before a doctor suggested gently that she might want to go home and sleep. She looked at the doctor. She looked at the hallway. "I have been eating vending machine crackers for a day and a half," she said. "I do not even like crackers." Evelyn would have already negotiated a catering contract with this hospital if she were awake. The doctor did not know what to say to this. Maggie went home. She came back the next morning. She came back every morning after that. On the 7th day, Carter Hartford stood in the corridor of Hartford Medical Center and told the attending nurse that his wife had passed during the night. He said it calmly. He was dressed well. He had Preston beside him. His voice was steady, and his face was composed, and he said the words like a man who had been practicing them, not out loud, but in that interior way people practice the things they know they are going to have to say. The nurse was confused. There had been no alert, no change in patient status for room 4B. She double-checked her system. She looked at Carter with uncertain eyes. He looked back with eyes that were absolutely certain. He asked for the paperwork. She processed it. She had no reason in that moment not to. Carter called a small private gathering at the house that same evening. Close family, a few friends, Brooke at his side, he announced that Evelyn was gone. He said she had passed peacefully. Diana wept with her hand over her mouth in a way that looked practiced. Preston shook his head slowly and embraced his brother. A modest memorial service was organized within days. Quiet, tasteful. Carter gave a short speech about love and loss. Brooke held his hand through all of it. Within 2 weeks, Brooke moved into Evelyn's home. She walked through the rooms Evelyn had furnished, and the kitchen Evelyn had chosen, and the nursery Evelyn had painted herself during the 7th month of her pregnancy. She rearranged things. She replaced things. She put her perfume where Evelyn's had been. Preston had found a lawyer, the kind of lawyer who does not ask too many questions. Through a process that moved faster than any legal process should, Brooke began signing hospital-related paperwork as the mother of the twins. She gave the babies new names. She threw away the names Evelyn had chosen. She named Evelyn's son, Chad. She named Evelyn's daughter, Brittany. In room 4B, nothing changed. The machines breathed beside Evelyn with their steady rhythms. Her grandmother's silver bracelet lay against her wrist. Nurses came and went and monitored her vitals, and noted no change, and moved on to the next room. Most of them did not know her name, but Claire did. Claire came every morning at 5. "Mrs. Hartford," she said on the 14th morning, "Brooke Summers moved into your house today. She brought approximately 11 suitcases and a decorative throw pillow collection that I believe violates several laws of interior design." The machines kept their rhythm. "Mrs. Hartford," Claire said on the 21st morning, "they held a memorial for you last week." Carter spoke. He said you were brilliant and devoted, and that he was going to honor your memory by continuing the work you loved. Pause. "I thought you would want to know that Judge Hollis did not attend. He sent a card. It said only that he was not available. I think we both know what that means. Doctors say coma patients can sometimes hear everything around them." Evelyn heard Carter's voice in the corridor when he told the nurse she was gone. She heard the scratch of pen on paper when he signed. She heard Brooke's heels on the tile outside her room, that particular rhythm, confident and unhurried, like a woman who has already decided something. She heard her babies crying somewhere down the hall on the first night of their lives. And she heard Claire every morning, every single morning. Mrs. Hartford. We are still here. In whatever place the coma had taken her, Evelyn was not fading. She was gathering herself. She was patient the way only a woman who has built $65 billion in silence knows how to be patient. 3 weeks after Carter's declaration, Maggie received a call from Judge Hollis. The call was brief. "I understand," Hollis said. We wait, Maggie said. They hung up. Neither of them filed anything. Neither of them made a sound. They simply stood guard on either side of the truth and let time do what time always does. The world outside room 4B kept going at its regular pace. Carter gave interviews. He posted photographs. He appeared at charity events and ribbon cuttings and press conferences with the composed, slightly melancholy air of a widower who is carrying a heavy weight with quiet dignity. He was very good at this. He had, after all, spent the better part of his career crafting public images for other people. It turned out he was quite skilled at crafting one for himself. He called himself the steward of Evelyn's legacy. He said her name often and warmly, and with the practiced grief of a man who had decided that grief, performed correctly, was an asset. The city believed him. Why would they not? He was charming. He was composed. He had Preston managing the paperwork and Diana managing the narrative, and Brooke standing at his side, looking like the future. What Carter did not know was that every single attempt to access Evelyn's estate had been quietly, immovably, almost serenely blocked. Maggie had been there at every turn, patient and unmovable as stone. Every motion Preston filed, every account Carter tried to access, every legal maneuver designed to give Carter control of the institution he had never built. All of it met the same response, delivered in Maggie's perfectly even voice. The estate is in legal review. Preston was frustrated. He told Carter it was a matter of time. Carter believed him. Carter believed most things Preston said because Preston had always handled the difficult parts, and Carter had always let him. Here's what neither of them understood about the corporate structure of Hartford Medical Group. Evelyn had established the company through a private trust 3 years before she married Carter. The trust was structured to hold 94% of all equity in every entity the group would ever own. Carter's name appeared nowhere in the founding documents, nowhere in the acquisition records, nowhere in the corporate filings, nowhere in the deed to the building, nowhere in the deed to any of the 17 buildings the group had acquired in 11 years. She had not done this to deceive him. She had tried once, early in the marriage, to explain what she was building. Carter had smiled and said, "That is nice, baby," and gone back to his phone. She had understood, after that conversation, that he was not ready. He might never be ready. And so she kept building in silence. Because the work was the work, and it did not require his permission or his understanding. It only required her hands and her mind in the next 11 years. $65 billion later, Preston was filing motions against a wall and did not understand why nothing opened. This is the moment in the story where I want to stop and say something directly to you. If you have ever built something quietly, if you have ever done the work while someone else took the credit, if you have ever been steered toward the side table near the kitchen doors in a room you built, you already know exactly what Evelyn knew. Power does not require an audience. It requires documentation. Document everything. Sign everything. Own the structure, not just the work. Because the work without the paperwork is a story someone else gets to tell. The work with the paperwork is a fact. 8 months passed. The Hartford Medical Group held its annual board gala. The biggest event on the hospital calendar, the night when every donor and every press outlet and every city official came together under one roof. Carter had spent 8 months positioning himself to use this evening. He had invited himself to speak. He planned to announce his formal ascension as the new public face of Hartford Medical Group. A grieving husband stepping into his late wife's shoes. The city would love it. The cameras would love it. Judge Hollis had confirmed his speaking slot and said nothing else. In room 4B, Claire sat with her morning coffee. "Mrs. Hartford," she said, "they are planning to announce Carter as group chairman tonight at the gala. At your gala. In your building. They are going to put your husband's name on a chair that belongs to you." The machines kept their rhythm. "I need you to wake up soon, Mrs. Hartford," Claire said. "I have been having this conversation by myself for 8 months, and while I appreciate the one-sided nature of our relationship, I think it is time you rejoined it." She finished her coffee. She straightened the bracelet on Evelyn's wrist. "We are still here," she said. She went to start her shift. At 4:47 in the morning, 3 weeks before the annual gala, Evelyn Cole Hartford opened her eyes. Claire was there. She was always there at that hour. She was sitting in the chair beside the bed, with her morning coffee, saying her quiet daily words, when she looked up and saw Evelyn looking back at her. Claire set her coffee down very carefully on the tray table. She leaned forward. Evelyn's eyes were open and clear and absolutely present. They looked at each other for a long, still moment. The machines kept their rhythm. The room was quiet. Outside the window, the city was still mostly dark. Then Evelyn's right hand moved, slowly, with enormous effort, and found Claire's wrist. "Maggie," Evelyn said. Her voice was barely a sound, barely air finding shape, but it was a word. It was a real word spoken by a real woman who had been somewhere else for 8 months and had come back. Claire was already pressing the call button, already crying, already saying yes, yes, Mrs. Hartford, I am calling her right now. Maggie arrived within the hour. The two women sat together in room 4B for a very long time. Maggie talked. Evelyn listened. Every detail of 8 months. The declaration, the memorial, Brooke in the house, the babies renamed, the legal maneuvers, the press strategy Carter had built around himself, the upcoming gala, the announcement Carter was planning to make. Evelyn's face barely moved through any of it. When Maggie finished, there was silence. Then Evelyn said, "The gala." 3 weeks, Maggie said. Then, "That is when," Evelyn said. Maggie looked at her for a moment. "You have been in a coma for 8 months, and the first thing you are focused on is a board meeting." "I was also going to ask about the twins," Evelyn said. "They are perfect," Maggie said. "Healthy, loud. They have your eyes." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "What did she name them?" Evelyn said. Maggie hesitated one beat too long. "Maggie." "Chad," Maggie said. "And Brittany." Silence. "She named my son Chad," Evelyn said. "I know, my son, who I was going to name James. James Hartford would have been a beautiful name. She named him Chad." "I know, Evelyn. And my daughter. Brittany." "Yes." Evelyn looked at the ceiling for a moment. "All right," she said. "Get me Judge Hollis." "There she is," Maggie said, and she was already on her phone. Hollis answered on the first ring. All he said was, "Understood." They began preparing. For 3 weeks, Evelyn recovered in private. No visitors beyond Maggie and Judge Hollis and Claire. The hospital staff on her floor were asked for their discretion. They gave it freely because most of them had always known whose name was on the building they worked in, and none of them had forgotten it. Evelyn spent those 3 weeks getting strong again, eating everything Claire brought her, doing the slow work of pulling herself back into her body. She did not spend time in anger. She did not rehearse speeches. She read through every document Maggie brought her, signed what needed signing, directed what needed directing. When she was not working, she sat by the window and held her grandmother's bracelet and thought about her children, somewhere in the city, who did not know their mother was alive. She thought about the names, Chad and Brittany. She thought about that for a while. Then she went back to work. The first catastrophic morning came 6 days after Evelyn woke up. Maggie arrived at 7 with documents Evelyn had not yet seen. She set them on the bed tray. She did not say anything for a moment. "What is it?" Evelyn said. "Preston found a judge," Maggie said. "What kind of judge?" "The kind judges find when they are not supposed to be finding them. In a county in another state. He filed amended birth certificates through that court 3 weeks ago. Brooke is now legally listed as the mother of the twins on official state documents. The original birth records have been sealed." Evelyn looked at the documents. He found a corrupt judge in another state to falsify birth records for children whose biological mother is alive and lying in a hospital bed, Evelyn said. "Yes," Maggie said. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "How much would it cost to purchase that judge's entire courthouse?" she said. "Evelyn, I am asking. You cannot buy a courthouse. I own 17 hospitals. I am asking how much it costs to purchase a courthouse." Maggie looked at her. "It is not for sale." "Everything is for sale," Evelyn said. "Find out the price. In the meantime, get me a family law attorney who is not afraid of interstate jurisdictional challenges and has a documented win rate above 90%. "I already have 3 candidates," Maggie said. "I know you do," Evelyn said. "Send me the files. Here's what I want you to know about this moment. When someone takes something from you through a system, the worst thing you can do is fight that system with emotion alone. Emotion is energy. But directed emotion, with documentation, legal strategy, and the patience to use the system better than the person who weaponized it against you, that is something else entirely. That is how you get your children back. Not through fury, through preparation. Document everything. Then use the documents. The second catastrophic morning came 11 days after Evelyn woke up. Maggie arrived at 8 with her phone already open to a news article. A journalist, she said. Preston fed him the story. Evelyn took the phone and read. The article was published in a major Chicago outlet and argued that Hartford Medical Group's founding documents contained irregularities, suggesting that Carter Hartford had been a co-founder whose contributions had been systematically erased from the company's official history. The piece quoted unnamed sources close to the family. It ran 3,000 words. It included photographs of Carter looking thoughtful and grief-stricken and visionary. By noon, it had been picked up by 6 national outlets. Carter gave an interview that afternoon. Evelyn was brilliant, he said, but she did not do this alone. Nobody builds something this size alone. He said it so sincerely. He almost believed it. Evelyn read the interview twice. He has been on my payroll for 6 years, she said. I know, Maggie said. His entire client base was generated through referrals, routed from our subsidiary accounts. I know that too. He is telling national press that he built this with me. Evelyn, I know. Does he understand that discovery is going to be the most educational experience of his adult life? Maggie said nothing. She picked up her phone and called the attorneys. But that was not the worst morning. The worst morning came 17 days after Evelyn woke up. The morning of the gala. Maggie arrived at 6 with a legal brief in her hand and a look on her face that Evelyn had not seen before. Not panic. Maggie did not panic, but something close to it. Preston filed an emergency injunction this morning, Maggie said. He is arguing that the evidence package we compiled for the DA was improperly obtained. A friendly judge granted a 72-hour hold an hour ago. The DA cannot act on any of our documents until the hold expires. Evelyn looked at the brief. He cannot stop it permanently, Maggie said. This is a delay. 72 hours and the hold dissolves, but tonight he walks into that gala and makes his announcement, and there is nothing legally stopping him, Evelyn said. Not through the documents, Maggie said. No. Evelyn set the brief down. She looked out the window at the Hartford Medical Center building across the street, her name on it. The gala lights already going up through the lobby windows, the catering trucks pulling around to the service entrance. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she picked up the phone. She called Judge Hollis. Raymond, she said. I need one thing. He said, name it. Can he file an injunction against a woman standing in her own building? There was a pause. No, Hollis said, that he cannot do. Then we go, Evelyn said. She ended the call. She looked at Maggie. Get me something white to wear, she said, and call my discharge team. 3 days before the gala, Maggie had presented Evelyn with the complete legal package. Every document, every signature, the founding records and the acquisition trail, and 47 written statements from board members and contractors and attorneys who had worked with Evelyn for a decade. The complete corporate structure of Hartford Medical Group laid out an irrefutable sequence. It is over, Maggie had said. We bring this to the DA tomorrow, and it is done. Evelyn read through every page. File it, she said. They filed it. The DA's office acknowledged receipt. Everything was in motion. Evelyn had allowed herself, for the first time in 8 months, to feel something close to relief. This is the moment I want you to understand about false victories. A false victory is not a failure. It is information. It tells you that the people working against you have not given up yet. It tells you they still believe they have a move left. And if you are the kind of woman who builds $65 billion in silence, What you do with that information is not panic. What you do is recalibrate. The injunction that Preston filed the morning of the gala was his last move. It was a delay, not a defeat. But Evelyn had spent 8 months in a room where every single day felt like a delay. She knew better than most people what delays actually are. They are waiting rooms. And she was very good at waiting rooms. The gala dress was white, simple, no embellishment. Claire had brought it that morning from the hospital gift shop of all places, because Maggie had made approximately 17 phone calls trying to find something appropriate on 4 hours' notice, and Claire had walked past the gift shop window at 6 in the morning and found a white sundress that, as Claire put it, looked like what you would wear if you were a woman walking back into your own building to reclaim everything from the man who thought you were dead. Evelyn looked at it for a moment. "It is from the gift shop," Claire said. "I know," Evelyn said. "The gift shop of your hospital." "I know," Evelyn said. "I approved the vendor contract." She put it on. She put her grandmother's silver bracelet on her wrist. She signed her discharge papers at 4 in the afternoon. She sat in the wheelchair for exactly the length of time the hospital required, and then she stood up and she walked to the elevator and she went downstairs and she got into the car Maggie had waiting at the service entrance because they were not, under any circumstances, walking out the front of the building 8 hours before the gala when Preston's people might be watching. They drove to Maggie's apartment. They sat at Maggie's kitchen table, and Maggie heated up soup, and Evelyn ate it, and they went through the evening's plan one final time. Judge Hollis had been working through back channels all day. He had filed a counter motion in federal circuit court challenging the validity of the injunction on procedural grounds. By 6:47 that evening, an hour before the gala began, the federal circuit had vacated Preston's injunction. The DA's evidence hold was dissolved. The full package was in active review. Maggie's phone buzzed with the notification. She read it. She looked up at Evelyn. "The injunction is gone," she said. Evelyn was looking at her soup. "I know," she said. "You knew? I called Raymond at 4, she said. "He said the motion was strong. I believed him. You knew, and you did not tell me." "You were heating the soup," Evelyn said. "I did not want to interrupt." Maggie stared at her. "You have been in a coma for 8 months, she said. "You wake up, you plan a legal counteroffensive, you get discharged from the hospital on the day of the gala, you are wearing a gift shop dress, and you are eating soup like it is a Tuesday." "It is a Tuesday," Evelyn said. "It is a Thursday." Evelyn looked at her. "It has been a long 8 months, she said. Maggie laughed. It was a sudden, real laugh, the kind that comes when tension has been living in a body for too long and finally finds a way out. They finished the soup. They got back in the car. They drove to the gala. The Hartford Medical Center atrium on gala night was dressed the way it always was. Chandeliers, fresh flowers, the quiet, elegant noise of a room full of people who believed they were at the center of something important. Donors and board members and press and city officials, all of them moving through the golden light with the easy confidence of people who have been told repeatedly that they matter. Carter arrived looking magnificent in a new tuxedo. Brooke was in burgundy beside him, polished and present. Diana and Preston sat in the front row like royalty. The press was in position. The cameras were ready. Carter took the podium at 8:15 and began speaking about vision, about the future, about the continued growth of Hartford Medical Group under his stewardship, about the legacy of his late wife that he intended to honor by taking bold leadership of the institution she had loved. He used the word visionary twice. He used the word dedication 3 times. He said Evelyn's name with the practiced warmth of a man who has decided grief is his best public quality. The main doors opened at 8:22. Evelyn walked in. She wore the white dress. No jewelry, except the silver bracelet at her wrist. Her head was up. Her shoulders were back. She walked slowly because she was still rebuilding her body's strength, and she knew it, and she did not pretend otherwise. But she walked with a steadiness that filled the room before she was halfway across it. She did not look around at the crowd. She did not look for Carter. She walked directly toward the front of the room with her eyes level and her face completely composed. The silence moved through that room the way a cold wind moves through a house when someone opens a door. It started at the back where people first saw her, and it traveled forward in a wave, table by table, face by face, until the whole atrium had gone absolutely still. Carter heard the silence before he saw her. He stopped mid-sentence. He turned. His face did the thing faces do when the body understands something the mind is still refusing to accept. The color left it first. Then the words left it. He stood at the podium with his mouth slightly open and his eyes fixed on the woman in the white dress walking toward him, and he could not move. Judge Hollis rose from his seat at the board table. He walked to the podium with the measured pace of a man who has been waiting 8 months for exactly this moment. He stood beside Carter. He gently, almost tenderly, took the microphone from Carter's hand. Carter did not resist. Hollis faced the room. When he spoke, his voice was calm and enormous. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hollis said, "the board of Hartford Medical Group would like to formally reintroduce the founder, the majority owner, and the acting chairwoman of this institution, Mrs. Evelyn Grace Hartford, whose name, I will add for the benefit of everyone in this room, appears on every single document this organization has ever filed, every acquisition, every deed, including the deed to the building you are all standing in right now." He paused. "I would also like to note for the record that the emergency injunction filed this morning against the DA's evidence review has been vacated by the Federal Circuit Court as of 6:47 this evening. The full evidence package is now in active review. Anyone wishing to speak with counsel may do so after the program." Preston stood up. Preston sat back down. Maggie moved through the room with quiet efficiency, distributing bound folders to every member of the press. Inside each folder was the complete corporate structure of Hartford Medical Group. 11 years of documents, Evelyn's name on every page, every signature, every founding record. The journalists opened their folders. The cameras turned from Carter to Evelyn. Diana's champagne glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Brooke looked at the exit. Hollis offered the microphone to Evelyn. She took it. She looked at the room, at the cameras, at the donors, at the board members, at the press, at the faces of people who had spent 8 months believing a story that had been built on a fraudulent death certificate and one man's absolute confidence that no one would check. She did not look at Carter. She did not look at Brooke or Diana or Preston. She looked at the room the way a person looks at something they built with their own hands, and she spoke in a voice that was quiet and steady and left absolutely no room for doubt. "This institution was built to heal people," she said, "and it will continue to do exactly that under its rightful leadership, effective tonight." She set the microphone down on the podium. She looked at Carter then, just once, for just a moment. A face that held no anger and no performance and no need for him to understand or respond or apologize. She had simply seen him, That was all. Then she walked to the head of the board table and took her seat. The room stayed silent for another long moment. Then the board members rose one by one and began to applaud. Carter stood at the podium with his mouth open and no words anywhere inside him. Maggie sat down next to Evelyn at the board table and leaned in close. "For the record," she whispered, "I have been eating vending machine crackers for 8 months waiting for this moment." "I know," Evelyn said. "I could hear you complaining about them." Maggie went very still. "You could hear us," she said. "Every word," Evelyn said. "I said some things," Maggie said. "You said I was the only genuinely competent person you had ever worked for," Evelyn said. "I stand by that. You also said that Carter's tuxedo at the memorial looked rented." "It did look rented." "You were not wrong," Evelyn said. She opened the folder in front of her. She picked up her pen. She began to work. And the room watched her. This woman in a simple white dress, with a silver bracelet at her wrist, doing what she had always done in every room she had ever entered, showing exactly what it looks like when a person has always known who they are regardless of who else tried to tell them otherwise. The morning after the gala, the story was everywhere. Every outlet in the city ran it. Every platform carried it. The headline wrote itself 100 different ways, but the facts were always the same. A woman had been in a coma in her own hospital while her husband declared her dead and handed their children to his mistress. A woman had built a $65 billion institution in 11 years of silence while the man she was married to stood in her building and smiled for cameras and called it his legacy. A woman had walked through a door and the whole room had gone still, because the truth has that effect when it finally arrives. The fraudulent death certificate was the first legal matter to surface. Maggie had compiled everything, every document Carter had signed, every step of the scheme laid out in clear and irrefutable sequence. She delivered it to the district attorney's office the morning after the gala, packaged neatly and completely the way Maggie did everything. Criminal proceedings began within the week. Carter was served at the house on a Tuesday morning. He came to the door in a bathrobe. The look on his face when the officer handed him the papers was the look of a man who had believed, up until that precise moment, that things would somehow still work out in his favor. Everything he had tried to claim in 8 months of legal maneuvering collapsed at once. Every account he had attempted to access, every asset he had believed was within reach, every position he had constructed for himself inside the institution his wife built, all of it closed. His name carried no weight anywhere. It had previously carried weight because the weight had never been his. It had been borrowed from a woman he had pushed to a side table near the kitchen doors and left standing there alone. Brooke left on a Thursday. She packed what she had brought and walked out of Evelyn's house and got into a car that was waiting for her. She did not fight for the twins. She did not look back at the house as the car pulled away. She had come for the life. When the life was gone, so was she. During discovery, something else emerged. Carter's PR firm, the business he had believed he built through talent and persistence and hard work, had been kept financially solvent for 6 years by a subsidiary of Evelyn's holding company. The client referrals that had built his reputation, the introductions that had generated his biggest contracts, all of it had been quietly, systematically routed through 3 layers of accounting from Evelyn's organization to his without his knowledge. When Maggie told Evelyn the journalists had found it, Evelyn was in her office signing quarterly reports. "Should we clarify that you did not do it to control him?" Maggie said. "I did it because the alternative was watching him fail publicly, and that would have been embarrassing for the children," Evelyn said. "He is going to be mortified when this comes out. He is going to prison, Maggie. I think mortified is the least of his concerns. The press covered that story with the particular energy the press reserves for stories that confirm what everyone already suspected. Carter Hartford had not built anything. He had stood in rooms that his wife built and smiled for cameras and called it success. And then, when she could not defend herself, he had tried to take what had never been his. The rooms had always known. They had just been waiting for someone to say so out loud. Diana gave one final interview, her last attempt to frame the narrative in her son's favor. The journalist published every word alongside the court documents and Evelyn's complete corporate history. Every moment of Diana's carefully performed grief, every charitable appearance, every time she had steered Evelyn toward a side table, or whispered that tonight was not her night, all of it replayed against the truth with devastating clarity. She stopped giving interviews after that. She stopped going to the charity events and the society dinners and the rooms full of people she had spent decades cultivating. The rooms did not notice she was gone. Preston faced his own legal consequences. The lawyer he had found in the other state had asked exactly the wrong questions in exactly the wrong courtrooms and was now a co-defendant. The amended birth certificates that had moved so quickly through a corrupt judge's court were now moving just as quickly through the courts in the other direction. Preston had always believed that being Carter's brother gave him a kind of insulation, a proximity to consequence that would keep the worst of things from landing on him directly. He discovered in a courtroom on an unremarkable Wednesday morning that the law does not recognize family loyalty as a legal defense. The twins came home on a Friday afternoon. Maggie drove them herself. She carried them in, one in each arm, and brought them to Evelyn, who was sitting in the living room of her own house in the soft afternoon light. Evelyn had not let herself fully feel the weight of their absence until that moment. When Maggie placed them in her arms, a boy and a girl, 8 months old and furious with curiosity, grabbing at everything within reach, Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment and just held them. She pressed her face into her daughter's hair and breathed. After a long while, she looked up at Maggie. "We are changing their names," Evelyn said. "Obviously," Maggie said. "James," Evelyn said. "James Hartford," Maggie said. "Beautiful." "And Caroline," Evelyn said. "Caroline Hartford." "Perfect." They were quiet for a moment. "Chad," Evelyn said softly. "I know. She named my son Chad." "She is gone, Evelyn. It is over." Evelyn looked at her daughter's small face. She touched her cheek. "Caroline," she said quietly. The baby grabbed her finger. Evelyn laughed. It was a small laugh, surprised and real, the kind that comes when joy finds you, before you have finished being sad. "Hello," she said. "I have been waiting a very long time to meet you. Some mornings now, before the city wakes up fully and the hospital phones start ringing and the board emails start arriving and the world remembers that it needs something from Evelyn Grace Hartford, there is a quiet hour. A particular kind of morning quiet that belongs only to the people who have been through something enormous and come out the other side of it with their souls still intact. Evelyn moves through it slowly. She makes tea, she checks on the children, she stands at the window with the cup warm in both hands and watches the sky go from dark to gray to the first thin line of gold at the horizon. Maggie comes over most mornings. She brings pastries from the bakery 2 blocks away, the ones with the cinnamon and the brown sugar glaze that Evelyn has loved since the first time she tasted them years ago when she was still working 2 jobs and signing her first acquisition papers by lamplight. They sit at the kitchen table and they talk about work and they talk about the children, and sometimes they sit in a comfortable quiet that only belongs to people who have known each other long enough that silence between them is never empty. It is just rest. Claire stops by on Sundays. She brings things for the babies, small things, soft things, the kind of things a person brings when they are not sure how to say what they want to say, so they say it with a stuffed elephant or a knitted blanket instead. Evelyn always makes her stay for tea. Claire always pretends she is just dropping something off. She always stays. Evelyn does not speak often about what happened, not because she is hiding from it, but because she has already processed it in the only place it ever truly needed to be processed, in the silence of room 4B, in the months when she could hear everything but could not yet respond, in the long interior space where a person learns, without the noise of the world to distract them, exactly who they are and exactly what they are made of. She found in all that stillness that she was not broken. She found that what Carter and Diana and Preston and Brooke had done to her had not taken a single true thing. They had taken proximity. They had taken access. They had moved into her spaces and put their names on her things. But a woman's real wealth, the kind that lives in the hands that sign the papers and the mind that knew how to build the thing in the first place, that cannot be declared dead, that cannot be signed over, that cannot be replaced by a woman who knows which heels make the right sound on a marble floor. The floor remembers who built it. Marble is honest that way. There is a framed photograph in Evelyn's office at Hartford Medical Center now. It is not a photograph of the building or the board or any of the milestones the institution has celebrated. It is a photograph of a farmhouse in Vermont, taken at sunrise, with long morning shadows and the edge of a porch where a little girl used to sit with her bare feet on the steps and read like the words were the only food she needed. Evelyn looks at it sometimes when the days are long. It reminds her where the whole thing started. Not in a boardroom, not in a university, not even in a small, rented office by lamplight. It started on that porch. It started with a grandmother who paid attention and taught a little girl to do the same. The bracelet is back around her wrist now. It never left her, not through the coma, not through the 8 months of silence, not through that long night in room 4B when the world above her was lying and rearranging and celebrating its own cruelty. It was always there, always warm against her skin, always holding the memory of the woman who pressed it into her palm and said, "What you build will outlast everything they say about you." It had. It always does. Carter Hartford pled guilty to filing a fraudulent death certificate and was sentenced to 4 years. Preston received 3 years and a permanent disbarment. The judge they found in another state is no longer a judge. Diana Hartford has not been photographed at a public event since. Brooke Summers relocated. Nobody followed. Hartford Medical Group reported its strongest quarter in company history 6 months after Evelyn resumed the chairmanship. James and Caroline Hartford are doing wonderfully. They are loud and curious, and according to their mother, are already showing an alarming interest in spreadsheets. James in particular has developed a habit of organizing his toy blocks by size and color before playing with them. Maggie considers this either deeply encouraging or mildly concerning. Evelyn considers it efficient. The name on the building has not changed. It never needed to. Here's the last thing I want to say, and I want to say it directly to you. The world is full of people who believe that power announces itself, that strength has to be loud to be real, that if a woman is not performing her capability for an audience, she must not have any. Those people will always be wrong about women like Evelyn Hartford. They were wrong about her in her first year of marriage when she signed her first acquisition papers in a rented office at 11 at night. They were wrong about her at the gala when they steered her to the side table by the kitchen doors. They were wrong about her in room 4B when they stood in the hall and called her gone. They will always be wrong because that kind of woman is not building for the audience. She never was. She was building for the work itself. And the work, when it is done right, when it is done in that particular quality of silence that only the truly dedicated ever find, the work outlasts everything, every lie, every betrayal, every man who stood at a podium that did not belong to him and smiled for a camera while the woman who built the room was standing near the kitchen doors. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself somewhere in Evelyn's patience, in the part where she kept going when nobody was watching, in the part where she walked through that door and let the room come to her, let this channel know. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and drop one word in the comments that describes Evelyn Hartford. Just one word. We will read every single one. We will see you in the next story. All content on this channel is manually researched, developed, and edited by our team, crafted with intention to bring you stories that mean something.